Hello everyone, we're still in Unit 6 for leisure, which is cruel sport. Today we're looking at the introduction of rules and regulations with the objective of finding out why new rules and regulations were even needed in sport and why these changes had to take place. A brief history of rules and regulation in sport. Sport was a popular pastime for workers because it helped relieve stress, it kept them active, it provided entertainment. Sport had, been played for thousands and thousands of years, but a standardized set of rules never really existed. It's a new concept for us. So some examples for you. Golf was invented in the 1400s, but the rules were never written down until 1744. Horse racing started in ancient Greece and ancient Egypt, but horse racing wasn't regulated until 1750. Cricket was first played about 500 years ago, but the rules were only written down towards the end of the 18th century. So why do sports actually require rules? One of the main reasons they were written down was due to factory owners. So during the Industrial Revolution, people would work in factories, and on the weekend they might go and play a game of football or rugby. And factory owners were getting really annoyed when their workers wouldn't turn up because they broke a leg or sprained their arm over the weekend. So they thought more rules in sports will make them safer. Sports only fair when both sides actually play to the same rules. You can't have a fair game when one side has a significant advantage over the other. And standard rules are needed for teams to play each other, especially if they're from different regions. And you might have experienced this in your own lives where you play a sport at school and then you play with your friends on the weekend who go to different schools and you have a different interpretation of those rules. Victorian sport. This is when rules started to be written down a little bit more. The Victorians noticed that a lot of their sports were quite dangerous, rugby, mob football, and there was this move away from physicality and aggression to more of an emphasis on fair play. And to have fair play, you need to write rules down. And going back to what we mentioned about factory owners, they were really concerned about the roughness of football and rugby and their workforce being unable to work. So by writing those rules down, you could then have a safer game and a safer workforce. Now, there's an interesting situation that arose between students in the town of Rugby and Windsor. And you may be familiar with Windsor because it's not far from where we are, right over here in High Wycombe. So the story goes in 1845, students at Rugby School towards the Midlands, they wrote down the rules for football. And in 1849, the boys at Eton School in Windsor, they wrote down their rules for football. Now, when they went off to uni, and you'll notice that Oxford and Cambridge are kind of in the middle of these two towns. When they went off to Cambridge, they went to go and play some football together and realized they had a different interpretation of the rules. The boys from Rugby kept touching it with their hands, and the boys from Windsor said, "What are you doing? Stop touching the ball with your hands. It's called football." And the writing down of these rules in Cambridge University in 1863 led to the development of the Football Association, but also of the Rugby Football Union in 1871. So looking at sport for health, there's a lot of studies that have shown that physical activity is really good for your mental health, and employers were keen to latch onto this. Factory owners realized that if my workers go and play a sport on the weekend, they're going to be more productive at work. And there's that old saying, a happy worker is a productive worker. So the establishment of work teams were encouraged. And there were some factories in the north who decided to make up a team of footballers in 1886, which would later actually become Arsenal. And the Lancaster and Yorkshire Railway Company, they evolved into what's now known today as Manchester United. So these big professional sports teams actually started off as teams in the workplace. So the big key points we need to know from today: sport became more regulated in the mid to late 1800s. The Industrial Revolution meant that workers had more free time to play sport. In doing so, factory owners wanted to make sure that they were cutting down injuries. So that led to them introducing more of these rules. Rules to make it easier for opponents to play from different regions. So if you think of the boys from Rugby and the boys from Eton, and rules made it possible for leagues to develop, to have standardized games that they could then see who was the best, whether it be from a different town or village or within the same workplace. So that's it for today. Please have a look on Show My Homework, complete the quiz, and any other work set by your teacher.